paper magic will survive like the heat death of the universe, and will...
Oh, it's a smuggler's copter. Would you like to crew this? And then it crashes because they don't understand arithmetic.
All your cards belong to me.
2 minutes into macing him in the eyeballs, I switched to pepper spray. He's like, it's all right, refreshing. And went back to the mace.
Magic is dying. I'm done. Selling everything.
I might be a hoarder. And yes,
I don't have the crayons or glue to explain this to you right now.
What, are you gonna die twice?
Oil will be worthless before magic cards will.
well, okay, Dr. Man.
That's Mr. Dr. Professor Jason.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into Brainstorm Brewery, or as some people might pronounce it, BISP.
What? You did a callback before you did the joke.
It's called a call forward.
That's... You take one English class and you learn about foreshadowing, and you think it...
Well, welcome into the show, everybody. We have a very special guest tonight. I'm Corbin. That was Jason. You heard DJ is here as well. And tonight we have with us Paige, the Maverick girl from Twitter, and a member of the Pauper format panel, or the PUF for short.
Oh, now
Welcome to the show.
retroactively that BISP thing you said earlier is funny now, Corbin. Congrats.
Thank you.
It paid off.
Thank you.
Got there eventually.
Nice foreshadowing, bud. That's how comedy is supposed to work.
Well, when you're a master, you just, you can break the rules.
Oh, boy. Speaking of the rules, it is the rules that I have to say who bought me this beer. Long time friend of the cast, Joey D, bought me this beer. And I'm going to shout him out and shout out Death and Stuff on Twitch. He streams on Mondays and Wednesdays, and he is sponsored by this podcast. So, in a sense, he used some of our money to buy me a beer, which I'm fine with. It's a delicious form of embezzlement. But if you would like me to shout you, or I guess your business or your stream or whatever out, just send me a beer. I've had people inquire about my address, so I assume in between the weird manifestos and like boxes of weird animal crap that I'm sure I'm going to be sent, I will probably get a couple of beers in there too. It just make sure I know what you'd like me to shout out, and that's the thing we'll do. It's a new segment called You Buy Me a Beer and I Drink It.
I was wondering if you had a good segment name for that, but that one's top tier. Honestly, don't just stop there. Don't keep working on it.
Yeah, I feel like you stop drilling when you hit oil.
Yep, that's how it goes.
I'm thinking of a theme song for it, like "You buy me a beer and I drink it," but it sounds like country.
Can you do
right?
like
a banjo?
Can you do like an accent?
You buy me a beer and I drink it.
That's good. I can already hear myself voting against my own economic interests.
Let's go, Brandon, buy a beer.
There you go.
I can't afford it because gasoline is $5 a gallon in California. And even though I don't live there, I'm angry about it. I don't know that the president doesn't control gas prices because I don't read America. You playing the song from Deliverance? Or did you just open your window so the music from next door can drift in?
Just wanted to set the scene, set the mood.
That's just
for
the
you.
overworld music in Oklahoma, Jason. You don't have overworld music where you live?
The scene is me being chased through the woods by all of Corbin's relatives telling me I have a pretty mouth.
They just need your teeth, man. They're losing them.
I mean, I'm out in Florida. It's a hellscape here no matter what.
I know, it's like Texas with Disney. It's crazy.
Well, on that note, welcome in, everybody. Paige, we wanted to have you on the show to talk about Pauper, because it turns out there's a lot going on with the and the Pauper format. And so for starters, explain to anyone who may not know sort of what you have done in Magic and how you have come to be a part of the otherwise known as the Pauper format panel.
Well, I have been playing Magic for about 23 years, give or take. And just, I've played all kinds of things over the years. Took a long hiatus, or a couple year hiatus, around Lorwyn block-ish. I moved from New York to Florida, and there just really wasn't a scene out here, at least at the time. And a couple years later, that changed, and so I started getting back into it again, and really went really deep on everything, and went into like modern, legacy, cube, just about everything, and then at some point I sold everything. I just wasn't really playing anymore. I didn't like the direction things were kind of going. This was around 2015-ish. So there was a lot of stuff going on. I wasn't really able to play as much and all that. And when I kind of wanted to get back into it, like a couple years later, turned out that I suddenly, as not just a college student living with mom and dad, now I've actually got bills. So I've got rent and all that. And I'm like, I can't afford all this stuff the way I would have before. And so Pauper just kind of became a good budget way for me to kind of get my feet back in the door with regards to playing Magic again. And that's basically what happened. And I started playing very heavily on Magic Online, and I would grind like multiple leagues a day and play big, a lot of the challenges, and started doing some other stuff. When Star City did the one-time Pauper Classic, I went and played that. Actually ended up winning that one. I have the plaque somewhere. And and so that's just it. I've been playing Pauper pretty, relatively hardcore for the last couple, for like the last 5 or 6 years, I want to say. And been playing a little less in the last couple of years just because I have, other obligations that have come up since then, obviously. But that's pretty much, where, my history with Magic's been. And I was brought in just because of that long, expertise, of playing for a number of years there.
Yeah, I mean, can you explain to people sort of what the Pauper format panel is and the purpose of it, and sort of how it came to be?
Sure. So, my understanding of it, I was actually approached by Wizards, specifically Gavin, to be a part of this, and it's presented as a multi international effort, because Pauper, obviously there's a large showing and a large following in in the States, but there's an arguably even bigger followings in like Europe, specifically Italy, and in Latin America, more specifically Brazil, and provides a lot of people a good affordable way to play Magic, and a lot of people really like the gameplay. So obviously, when you have a lot of that, you have a very differing opinions on how the format looks and everything. But the concerns really came from things like let's be real here, Wizards isn't really able to stay on top of things. Frankly, a lot of times it seems like they can't even they're not able to stay on top of a lot of other formats. Obviously there's been a lot of calls to do stuff in Modern and Legacy, and heck, even Standard recently. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people feel like that's kind of been on falling on deaf ears sometimes. Pauper was kind of worse because, a lot of people at Wizards are Modern players. They are Legacy players. Even if they don't play very often, they're familiar enough with these formats that they kind of have a good grasp on what to do. Pauper started as a community format, and it was a budget thing. So it's like, if you have Modern or Legacy, odds are good you're probably just going to go play Modern or Legacy. So a lot of those people that already had access to that maybe not, be as interested in Pauper so much. So there was, a lot less people at Wizards that who know really about the Pauper format and would be experts in it compared to those other formats.
Right.
And what that caused was a certain like lag in their ability to tackle certain problem cards.
Well, and they've had a lot of issues with cards like that over there. It seems to me on my end, it seems just kind of impossible to design for Pauper. So
pretty much, because then it wasn't, that took several months to fix. Then we had Fall from Favor, which took several months to fix, and they kind of knew it was an issue out of the gate. And then the same thing happened with
some of these cards are so innocuous too. That's what's just
that was
wild
the
about
Chatterstorm. Chatterstorm was the one that I'm thinking of.
Well, it's really hard to specifically design for Pauper because, rarity is a construct of something
Right.
entirely unrelated
Exactly.
to game design and balance.
Well,
like,
outside of
rarity is a
limited.
construct of
Yes.
right, yeah. It's a construct of like a different construction of the game and how you use the pieces.
And
So,
there's been like several times too where we've had what's called downshifts. So
Right.
you have
Yes.
a
Yeah.
rare, an uncommon, or sometimes even a rare that gets brought down to a common, and so that completely changes dynamics of like.
And like rarity doesn't always have a meaning. Like
Right.
commander precons are a great example of this, where like there are rares and commander precons that have the same quantity of cards in existence as commons. Like
Yep.
just for player experience and just sort of teaching players about the game. Like, oh, this is a rare card. It's expected to do this kind of thing. Not because of quantity of supply, but because of this card
Right.
does kind of similar power level things to other cards.
Right,
or-
and then there's like other examples of that, which we'll talk about it shortly, I'm sure. But the one card Bonder's Ornament, which was just banned in the format, which again we'll get back to that
Right.
soon here, I'm sure. One of the sticking points to that card was that it was never really kind of meant to be a common. It just kind of was,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and that's because it was the rather than being like the one of for this one commander deck, which is usually where they put it at the rare and everything.
They wanted it to
It
be in
was-
all of them, so everybody
Right.
would have one.
So it was
Right, so that's how they designated it as common, but really they could have designated it as uncommon or rare. They just did it like that just because. Ash Barons was the same way. Ash
Yes.
Barons kind of really changed up the format quite a bit, and that was one of those too. It was just meant to be that mana fixer for those for those 4-color decks, and so they just kind of threw it into every one of those decks, but that made it go in as a common, so it then
It's-
went into Pauper.
Seems
It's
to me
so
that
weird.
Pauper and
go ahead.
EDH have in common that they are both the formats that accidentally have lasting consequences when Wizards tries
Yeah.
to sell a different product.
Yes.
Like Brawl decks, baby. Tulane. Tulane's not going to be a problem for standard.
No.
well,
Arcane
true
Signet?
name, right? True name Nemesis. Commander card, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Arcane Signet, we just need to fix the mana for standard Brawl.
Yuck.
I do think that it's really interesting, and I'd love to talk to somebody from Wizards who's been there a while about this, about like that sort of rarity discussion point when it comes to cards with the same supply, because there's like a whole micro economy that other players have who are super disenfranchised from like Magic Twitter or what you think of when you consume Magic content. They're sort of like the board game players who treat it Magic as like this, oh, I'll go to Target and buy a pack kind of thing, and how like rarity impacts those structures.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can find those isolated play groups, it's wild. It's like, oh yeah, we trade rare for rare here.
Yeah. And there's
Or
like other
we
things
trade
too, like
5 rares per common or 5 commons per rare, whatever. Like that decision point of how you put like, is Jade Tome rare in this precon, or is it uncommon, or is like it's completely unrelated to power level formats like Pauper. Sometimes I'd be expecting to see it like, oh yeah, this is Tempt with Vengeance is a rare because of these kinds of players and how we want to teach them about the game without actually giving them a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that's not to say anything about like Moto or anything. Magic
Yeah.
Online. Bonder's Ornament, I remember that went way up there early on.
Well, there's also
Players
cards
would
that like don't even exist on Magic
Yep.
Online sometimes.
Yeah, there's a couple odd cases, especially after the when they did the Pauper unification a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a couple really oddball cases that like of like neat cards that just never showed up on Magic
Weren't the
Online.
Monarch cards not on there for a while too, or something like that?
Yes.
Something to do with conspiracy.
Yeah, at first, basically what happened was they only released a couple of they didn't release the Monarch cards at all when they put Conspiracy Take the Crown cards on Moto.
Right. Yeah, because Palace Jailer was the big one, right?
Right, Palace Jailer was the reason that they did it, because Palace Jailer started showing up in Death and Taxes lists in Legacy, and they're like, well, we got to make this match, so I guess we're putting in Monarch. And then they put in some of the Pauper ones, and then those got put in. Those went way up in price, too. And, and that was just very crazy for a
Wait,
while.
what went up in price today?
No, this was, a while ago. This is like when these first came out.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Was like the Monarch cards, like Palace Sentinels was like 25 ticks on Moto at one point or something.
That's
And
tight.
Same thing with like Thorn of the Black Rose kind of went way up there. And the only reason like those really went down is because they reprinted them in a couple different ways. Obviously, when you put them in Commander Legends, at Common, that made it a lot more accessible. And they also gave Thorn of the Black Rose out as a prize for the Pauper Cube when they did that a couple years ago, I think. So, that helped with accessibility, but it definitely made it very difficult for certain respects. But there's also like a couple other odd cards from like the early years. None of them are like particularly great or anything, but like they have corner cases.
This is all. I've played maybe like 5 games of Pauper in my life, so this is all just it's crazy.
I used to have a Pauper deck.
This is all just a completely different format.
Like 4 years ago, I had a black
green black bullshit.
I had a black green land destruction deck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where it was like the goal was like turn 1 you Arbor Elf, turn 2 like Utopia Sprawl, Monvali Acid Moss.
Yeah, that's like kind of a deck still. Actually, like to pick gained a lot of steam around like after when was it? It was kind of like like 2 or 3 months before Modern Horizons 2 came out, after the ban Fall from Favor, because they put in what started showing up in the format was a whole bunch of those Cascade creatures from Commander Legends. Like the 6-7 mana cards that nobody thought was going to be really any good. Well, turns out if you just like play a bunch.
Why do they keep printing Cascade on anything?
Yeah, because it's fun.
It's like Delve, right? Like they tried Delve with Tombstalker. Oops, this is really good. Okay, let's try Dig Through Time. Oh god, we made a mistake. What about
free
Murktide
spells
Regent?
are always bad. It doesn't matter if it's Phyrexian mana, if it's Force of Will, if it's Delve. Free spells are bad. People should have to pay mana for their spells.
This is why I'm saying they can't really design for Pauper, because those cards are perfectly fine and limited.
Corbin. This is where we say we Yu-Gi-Oh now.
Why would we say that though?
I mean, you got Master Jewel just came out.
We said that when we got
Everybody's
completely illegible masterpiece cards.
Mm-hmm.
We've been Yu-Gi-Oh since then.
I agree, but
Since
the point
you
is,
read the word Shatterstorm.
yeah, I mean, the point is that it's always been. So I don't know. We've always been Yu-Gi-Oh. Who cares?
But yeah,
and that's a good thing. Like just as a heads up, like that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yu-Gi-Oh is very popular.
Not in the U.S.
Doesn't matter.
Still, quote unquote, one of the big 3, as it were. It's Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon.
Yeah.
Artifact died, Hex died, Flesh and Blood died.
What about Force of Will?
The person listening to this cast is listening in 2050.
Flesh and Blood died.
So
You're 9 months.
Yeah,
early.
they're listening to this like 3 years from the future. I'm saying it. Like the number of people who listen to this podcast posthumously, that sentence is gonna be more accurate for them than the people who listen to it in like the next week or two. So like I'm just being more accurate for the crowd that goes back and listens for the glory
I'm
days.
banking all of my emotional energy on Flesh and Blood being a game forever. I will never play Flesh and Blood, but I will make Flesh and Blood content.
It's funny how much less of that game like I've been hearing just in my feed in general, just after that whole cheating snafu and their whole response to that.
Well, Flesh and Blood, it was like somebody looked at Magic the Gathering and was like, we're going to take the most salient aspect of this game, which is free spells and the reserve list.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can keep the rest.
Yeah, right?
I think Flesh and Blood is great.
To bring it back to Pauper, though, I have a Pauper Breaking Bulk.
Breaking bulk time. Breaking bulk time. Break.
Oh, yeah, Breaking Bulk. There's so much good stuff.
It's a pick. Breaking bulk. The end.
Okay, Breaking Bulk. Here we go.
So it is a common, Corbin, just so you know. Pauper
not a
means that you can
rare
only-
this week. Oh,
Pauper means that you can only play commons, Corbin.
Good
just
for
so
you,
you're-
DJ. Good for you.
It is
My
from
eldest
Call
band
Time. It is
Call
from Call
Time?
Time.
Is it Raven form?
No,
What color is it, DJ?
colorless.
A common?
This This goes for $1.30 on TCG Direct.
You go for $1.30 on TCG
The
Direct.
colorless common from Kaldheim.
Did you mean for it to be an alliteration like that, or
No,
There was
I'm
some
just-
kind of
it's just natural talent.
is this a token or some shit?
Nope, not a token. It is a card. You
Is
find
it a
in booster
card
packs.
in the set?
Yes, it is set. Yep.
Probably some kind of mana rock. What
It's
mana
drawn
rock?
by
it-
Johann Voss.
Is
Johannes
it one
Voss.
of the Snowlands?
It is one of the Snowlands.
Oh,
Okay. Which of the?
Oh, is that not good enough for you, Corbin? Oh.
Which of the 15 Snowlands is it?
I couldn't get it. Ugh. It's
Only
DJ
15?
broke the rules again.
The green black
DJ
one.
picking his common cards this time. It's Ice Tunnel, which is the blue-black one.
I thought
It's
the
a-
green black one was worth more. That gets.
It might
played
be. I
more.
just happened to find an Ice Tunnel and saw that it was more than what I thought a
Hang
guild
on.
gate would be.
My guess would have been the blue-red one.
Oh, turns out Ice Tunnel is worth more despite being played less. That's neat.
So yeah,
It's played 30% less than Rimewood Falls and Woodland Chasm. So this is an EDH doing this.
I just there's always the common or uncommon dual land cycle in most sets that they print these days. Most of the time they do not get prohibitively expensive. And I didn't expect to see the Guildgate but Snow version of this be over $1.
It's fetchable.
that was
It is
a big-
fetchable.
It's an
That was a
island
big deal.
swamp. Yeah,
That was a
and
big
it's a
deal, too.
snowland.
Mhm.
I play these in decks where I want snowlands, which is any deck where I can run Draugr Necromancer, which is any deck that's black. So yeah, I run some ice tunnels. Cool.
All right,
I
Corbin.
don't have a common.
All right.
I want to hear Corbin's extremely rule adhering to pick that is strictly by the book on Breaking Bulk. Breaking Bulk by the book.
Breaking book.
Freaking book.
I'm
Yeah,
leaning
you're good.
in, Corbin.
Why don't you go ahead, Jason?
No. Not anymore. I refuse until you've gone. Let's hear your good one, Corbin.
Is that your
show
mouse
the guests
hand?
how to-
Is that your
show the
mouse
guests
hand frantically scrolling to
Oh,
find?
oh.
I don't do anything frantic.
We can see the reflection in your glasses, bro. You're looking for a pick right now, bro.
I
What are
always
you
have.
doing?
Look, I have so many cards next. Always have picks lined up.
Oh, he's got picks lined up. Let's hear
Just-
one.
That's
for
present
the-
tense, by the way.
Let's hear one.
Present tense, not past tense.
Shoot.
Just for the record.
Go. And your pick is go.
Well, now I'm just. Now I actually just kind
Now
of.
he's gonna sandbag it.
Now I just want to make you wait, right?
Would you like me to go, hey, I have an uncommon that has 3 printings. It is a blue uncommon with 3 printings, and it's still almost $2.
And what's that?
Oh, man, I'll give it away. Board of the
A
Gods.
blue uncommon with 3 printings. Like,
Wow.
okay, that's
2,000 cards. From Born of the Gods, you say?
Board of the Gods. Blue uncommon.
has archetype of
Yeah, I'm
blue
about to say,
flying been
it sounds like
printed that many
archetype.
times?
Archetype of Imagination is the blue one.
Can
Yeah.
you believe Archetype of Imagination is almost $2 retail?
Yeah.
3
Yes.
printings.
Is the green one like 7 again yet?
It's
Because the
it's
green
crazy
one's
to
always
me.
been the nut.
Who is bulking these to me? And I mean, 2 of those printings were Commander and Booster, or Mystery Booster
Booster.
/ the list. But
Yeah,
still,
I believe that was one of the ones that was actually in the mystery boosters.
That's one of those cards where your opponent watches you pay 6 mana for a 3/2 uncommon, and they're like, "What is this, a precon?" And then they die. Like, they're like, "What is this, amateur hour? You're paying 6 mana for a 3/2 uncommon that? Oh wait, my guys lose flag? Really?
Yeah, so you're dead.
makes my Ishkana the Graph Widow deck even more deadly.
All right, y'all ready for this?
Yes, Corbin.
DJ, strictly adhering to the rules pick from over here. A green uncommon from Ixalan.
Well, Corbin, if you're gonna introduce it with a Jock Jams tune, maybe you should give us another Jock Jams reference. Y'all ready for this? That brought me back to 1996 when
I
the
say, welcome.
Chicago Bulls were good.
Welcome to the jam.
Come on and slam.
Ixalan green uncommon. Is it a merfolk?
Is there a better metaphor for them making a bad Space Jam movie for no reason? And just
I liked it.
God.
I liked
You
it.
did?
Mm-hmm.
You would.
I watched like 3 minutes of clips of that movie, and I just like hard noped out of it.
I liked it.
Wait, Corbin.
Who liked it more, you or your
Corbin.
5-year-old?
Corbin, did you like that one?
Don't do that. DJ's referencing the fact that when we stream on Wednesdays, there's a clip of Corbin saying, "I like that one." That plays whenever anybody follows us on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Brainstorm Brewery. Follow us while we're streaming, so you can throw me off my game.
My Pauper pick remains impeccable.
Wait, you said it was an uncommon.
Okay.
You said Ixalan Green uncommon.
That's
Is
true.
is this a Pauper
We
pick?
are panning your Pauper pick because it doesn't
I mean,
adhere to the...
I asked if it was a merfolk and you didn't say anything.
no, it's not a merfolk.
We have a Pauper picks paradigm that you're violating. Pick a Pauper paper pick that adheres to our Pauper paper pick paradigm.
Corbin, is it common or uncommon?
It's an uncommon.
And it's not a merfolk. Okay.
From what?
Ixalan.
Ixalan.
Is it the dinosaur rampant growth?
Yeah, I was thinking.
It is. It is ranging raptors. 3 mana, 2/3 enrage. When it's out damage, you rampant growth. Yeah, it's a $1 card. Like, it's a 90-cent card. The foil is over $3. Like, solid
It's a
pick.
dinosaur.
Sweet.
Pick 'em.
Dinosaurs
I
are
need
great.
all dinosaurs. Even the bad ones. They need love too. Even
The
Runic
number of
Armasaur.
Gishaths that sell in an average week will always blow my mind.
As I was like, Gishath is worth so much money.
Like, all of those...
How have they not reprinted Gishath?
It got a Judge promo this year, Jason.
Ugh. Someone asked me, hey, should I invest in Gishath? I'm like, no, they're going to reprint that 3 times before 2022.
No, it was it was Zakama that just got the.
Oh, did it? Okay, sorry. All dinosaurs look the same to me.
I mean, if you look at like Zakama and just kind of look at Gishath, like I definitely have mixed those two up.
DJ,
I just
looking at
see
the art.
dollar signs.
my kid's going through his
Nothing
dinosaur
else.
phase, so we know.
Zakama is the Palinchron, right? Zakama's
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Palinchron and Gishath is the, I don't know.
When it bashes face, you or when a dinosaur bashes face, you
DJ, there are so many kinds
like
of
flip
dinosaurs.
cards
You got to
off
learn
top
them
of your
all.
deck till you hit more dinosaurs, kind of thing.
Like so I always say Magic is a weird aside, like small aside. I always say Magic is like a volume game, not a margins game. When you're trying to actually buy and sell cards, you just want to move as many cards as possible in the shortest amount of time. And it's like the number of transactions you have is the best part. You don't want to like fuss over like, oh, I bought this for 7 and then I need to get like 12 or 13. No, you buy 7, flip 9, and then you just do that a million more times.
Right.
So like the volume specifically of those like weird 3-color casual cards that you wouldn't expect to move in quantity has always baffled me. Like Nico Bolas, God Pharaoh, Gishath, Zakama, there's another one, like just stuff like Godsire, like all those just weird 3. I'm like, nobody wants these in bulk. Like you expect to sell a lot of paths, a lot of fatal pushes, but like 3-color one-ofs just sell so many copies. It's always weird. It's always just weirded to me.
Commander,
Good old
baby.
Commander.
Yep. And dinosaurs.
Everybody wants to build, and I guess that just speaks more to the, like you said, it just speaks more to like the fact that Commander is a rotating format.
Also true.
Like people build decks, they play them for 3 weeks, then they take them apart, and then they build something else, and they trade out of it, and then they always have to have the shiny new thing, even if the shiny new thing isn't just something that came out, even if it's something they discovered,
New
or
to
that their
them.
friend played, or
Yeah,
that
I
they...
I remember back in college when I like was really starting to kind of get back into the game again, and all I did was I had like 7 or 8 EDH decks, and then I would like take them apart and build a cube, and then I would take the cube apart and make commander decks again. But because
Yeah.
I'm building that from the remnants of all of those old commander decks, they all turned into new commander decks.
That's fun.
totally different
That's fun.
ones.
That's great.
And then, like I did that like 3 or 4 different times.
Magic cards are just Legos.
I'm finally getting around to building my Tovolar deck 6 months late, right? And, you know, it may, who knows, before I actually get around to buying the cards, I may be like somebody buying their Gitshath. You know, they're just a few years late on the dinosaur deck, right? But they've just been kicking it around since then.
Tovolar.
Yeah. Werewolves. Let's go. It's going to be fun. You make wolves and werewolves.
EDH isn't supposed to be fun.
Fun?
You want fun,
EDH isn't about fun. EDH is about Twitter.
Oh my god. Where's the lie?
True.
But frankly, though, I'd rather see Commander Twitter most of the time than I would, like, Pro Magic Twitter.
Oh my god.
I don't even know. They're both pretty
I brush
bad.
up against Pro Magic Twitter.
They're both bad.
Twitter
is
the
bad,
problem is I would
obviously,
have to
so-
block as many people in the Pro Magic sphere as I have blocked in the Commander Magic sphere to make Twitter a good experience for me.
Magic Twitter is just like a hellscape anyway, regardless of how you slice it. Like,
hell is other people, and that's where other people live, is Twitter. So.
The best part of Magic Twitter is when, like... Sorry. The best part of Magic Twitter is when you find somebody who, like, is discovering one card that came out 8 years ago, and you're like, that card just came out yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And they're tweeting in all caps, like, this angel's gonna change everything! Like, that's the most pure part of Magic Twitter.
I love that. I do really love a lot of that. And we've been seeing a lot more of that over the last couple of months, and it's very refreshing.
My favorite part of Twitter was when Ted Cruz accidentally shares pornography, but, like, your thing sounds pretty cool, too.
Yeah, I just started following, because what I did, you know, because of the whole pandemic and everything, I ended up, like, selling out of a lot of my Magic stuff and actually went more into retro games. Because at least then I can actually, like, you know, play them.
That's something I don't know much about, but I have an amount of because I'm a hoarder. So, like, what's the deal with retro games? Is this like a booming business?
It's a thing. For me, it's
boomed.
For me, it's a hobby. What happened was, like, I went really kind of hard on digital for a little while. It was just better financially for me. Like, you would get a like, there's on the PlayStation Network, right, for the PS3 and all that, and PSP, there's a game on there called Klonoa Door to Phantomile. You could buy it for $6 digitally.
Is that all one word? Is that like an Asmo?
No, it's not. It's Klonoa.
Asmarana Mardukadest and a Klovikar.
Klonoa is the name of the character, and then it's Door to Phantomile. And if you go and look up the actual game itself, let me actually pull up the price, but the price for a complete in-box copy is like several $100s.
Sure.
So it just, let me see here, $578 on price charting. So it just made more sense to go kind of digital for a while. But the problem was, or what the problem's become, is that a lot of these companies and services have, like, started to slowly pull the plug on all of that. So the big one was when the Wii did it a couple years ago, and the Wii shop went down. And what that meant was they didn't just shut down the store, as in, like, you can't buy anything anymore. It was, they shut down the whole service, so if you had any games on there that, like, you had purchased, you can no longer download those games. So, all of those games that I bought, when I transferred them from my Wii to my Wii U, because you can do, like, a whole system transfer, so it basically basically transfers all the licenses from your Wii to your Wii U, and I did that. Problem is, when you do that with your Wii U, it actually treats your Wii U as a completely new Wii. So all of those games that I had from my Wii before, I had them all on an SD card. And so when I tried using that same SD card in my Wii U, it no longer lets me play those games. And because the Wii store is shut down, I can no longer go back and re-download those games. So I'm just out, you know, $100 or like a whole ton of games there, you know, probably a couple $100, and
Interesting.
Then they're talking about doing that with then they're talking about doing that with the PlayStation Network too, you know. So then I have like hundreds of games on there, and like they're talking about cutting the service for PS3 and PSP and PS Vita, where eventually you'll just not be able to download those games anymore. And thankfully there was enough blowback that Sony decided to not do that, but I think that's more of a not do that yet kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that,
I mean, there's always been that like little rider when you scroll through the terms and conditions and click I agree that says like you don't technically own these.
right. So and
But,
that just
like-
made me want to just like start getting back into it, so that way I at least have the games, you know.
I've got a bunch of N64 games I'm quite proud of, and I don't ever have to worry about that. You just
Yeah.
have to know how to blow on them properly to, you know, coerce them into working.
Corbin, Nintendo just hasn't figured out a way to access Oklahoma yet. They just haven't had like a sleeper agent. They just haven't awoken their sleeper agent who's gonna come and knock on your door. Like that's
But yeah.
you're safe for now.
No one needs to knock on my door. I got like 4 Alexas, a Switch. We're wide open, okay? Like
So
it's like it's coming from inside the house.
since the pandemic meant like I can't really go and play cards anymore or anything. Most I
Right.
can do is some online Commander or play Magic Online, which it's just not the same. And especially the fact that I'm in Florida of all places, it just doesn't really give me much confidence to go play at a shop. And so I started, I live on my own. I don't have anybody else in here, so it's just me. And I also started working from home and everything a couple months back. And so just all of that just kind of made me like, I need to give myself something to do. So I kind of switched a lot of my Magic cards into retro games. They're still collectibles. They still have some kind of financial value to them. But it's something I can kind of still play with. It was like, I think it got to the point where I was like, I have an Angus Mackenzie sitting in my closet. And I'm like, but this could be like several of these games. And it still has that same kind of financial value to it.
So what is your favorite system to play games on?
Sega Genesis. I'm a big Sega nerd.
Quackshot speedrunner. Yeah, we know.
And but because I got into that, I also started following a lot more of like retro game Twitter and everything.
Mhm.
And so all they do is they literally just like share like, hey, remember this game? Here's a screenshot of this game.
Yeah.
Like just random retro game you've probably never heard of. Whole spectrum of different game systems. Here's these pickups. And there's almost no drama. And it's just like, as soon as I started following a lot of that, it was like, this is incredibly refreshing.
Oh
So you're
yeah,
here to evangelize our listeners into being
Using the
GDQ
internet
people.
for good. What?
I mean, I'm part of the Legends of Runeterra subreddit, and that entire place is just full of like ex-arena addicts and whales. They're just like, it's like a self-help group for just like,
Yeah.
they all huddle around together and they're like, remember when we used to buy our wild cards and not be able to...
I mean, you're seeing that kind of now a little bit, right? With Master Duel. You're seeing a little bit of that coming out
and-
again. People are like, what do you mean I get like $100 in gems for free by playing for like a couple days?
Yeah. People just don't realize how predatory the arena economy is until they like play literally any game that's not it.
Right.
And then, because I've tried to convert people from Magic to Runeterra because I enjoy that game, and it's just like, but it's not Magic, and I'm like, have you tried anything else
Yeah.
at all?
It's just that knee-jerk reaction. A lot of them probably haven't even tried that stuff and don't really understand that,
This isn't a
These
Legends
other
of
things can be
Runeterra
fun.
podcast. Come on now.
Not yet.
It's like when I get really burnt out on Magic, I sometimes will just go over and play Pokemon for a little bit. Like, it's dull, but at least it's like something to kind of freshen it up a little bit. I just have a little bit of fun with it.
I never
Like-
get burnt out on Magic. Because there's so many formats.
And so many sets.
So many commanders.
Yeah.
So
what do you mean
many a
burnout?
fourth thing.
So Paige, how did you get on the community advisor group then?
The Pauper format panel.
Yeah.
The PAG.
Basically, Gavin just approached me and asked me if I want to be a part of it and wanted to lend some of my expertise to it. And I said, yeah. So, that all came about,
If you just
I mean,
stop talking
that-
now, that'll be the best stories.
that's
They asked me
really-
and I said yes.
That's really the long and short of it. He just kind of laid it out. Here's what we're doing. And I said, sure.
Well, yeah, and as a result of that, we saw a round of bannings, and we were talking about it before the cast, but what was it? Prophetic Prism, Bonder's Ornament, and a third magic card, ATOG, was sent packing from Pauper, and you mentioned earlier
That's brutal.
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier that this, a lot of thought went into this. The explanation Gavin put out there was very detailed. Are you expecting, if we don't know if like Wizards is able to really specifically design around Pauper per se, do you expect the pace on reactivity to bannings to increase as a result of this panel, or sort of what's the future from here?
Yeah, and that was pretty much like one of the reasons, as I understand it, that the panel was even like formed in the first place. It was because obviously we kind of talked about some of the other ones, right? Astrolabe, Mystic Sanctuary, and you know what else was banned? Because I said there was a second ban with Mystic Sanctuary. It was Expedition Map, and but then after all of those bans, well, then we had the Fall from Favor one. But that took forever, and it was like almost apparent when it first came out that was going to be a problem. Like,
it's just wild because Fall from Favor is just like your creature doesn't untap and you're the monarch or something, right?
Right. So
it's just limited. Like it's just so not scary.
So it made sense for limited, but it doesn't make sense in Pauper where it's like literally a removal spell and a draw engine in one go. And so the control checks just ran away with it. It just turned into a Fall from Favor meta. Like, there's a lot of people, depending on who you ask, who think, like, Monarch should be banned and removed from the format and taken care of. So
it has seemed to cause a lot of problems over the years.
Right. So depending on who you ask and who you look at and everything, it was already kind of like a questionable mechanic to begin with. And then they just, like, made it, like, a clear problem. But the problem was that it took like several months to ban the card when a lot of people pretty much knew out of the gate that this card was going to be an issue. And then we saw the same thing over the
You just had to beg them to care about it.
Right. We saw the same thing with Modern Horizons 2 as well. And that was kind of what really kind of set it off. The problem was Modern Horizons 2 printed a lovely little card called Chatterstorm into the format.
That one was just clearly broken.
Right. So Chatterstorm was...
Because Pauper, for people who don't know, Pauper has a long history of broken Storm decks.
So fun fact, Storm was actually when I first ever played the format, and I played those stupid Storm decks.
I did too.
And so, I was like probably one of like the handful of like people who actually like remembers those days. And the format was like literally like
Temporal Fisher, let's go.
Yeah, it was like 60% Storm decks.
Yeah.
Well, because you had Grape Shot and Empty the Warrens as well. And so decks just played those. And you would just like one-shot your opponent, and half the time the deck would whiff as well. So it'd either be like you whiffed or you just went in. But like 50% of the meta was just the Storm decks.
And it just played and Familiars, right? Familiars were just the ultimate... Just very fun Pauper card.
I don't remember if Familiar was like such a big deck back then, but I remember the other decks were like Infect, Affinity, and Delver. Because like Infect also had Invigorate at the time. And so that was just kind of busted and broken bonkers. Affinity was actually one of the ways that I kind of picked up the format in the first place. So it was kind of fun around that time, I definitely have a history, having played those Atog decks and everything. But the long and short of it is, Chatterstorm was basically a small version of Empty the Warrens.
Right.
So it was 1 and a green and only create 1/1/1 instead of 4 mana create 2 1/1s. The problem is though, there was also a lovely little card printed called First Day of Class.
It saw the word Storm printed on it. That was the problem.
Yeah, and the problem as well is that First Day of Class is the 1 and a red, and for the rest until the end of turn, any creature that comes into play under your control comes in with a +1/+1 counter and haste. So all those 1/1s are suddenly 2/2s with haste. Woo. So you just dump them all and swing. Everybody knew that card was broken from the day it was printed. It took about like 4 or 5 months before it was actually banned from the format. And everybody knew it was a problem right from the onset. And then not only did that show up to be a problem, but Affinity showed up to be a problem because we got a strictly better Mirror Enforcer, with Mirror Enforcer already being in the format, and we got indestructible artifact lands, which the big sticking point to Affinity was that, like in every other format that's ever had Affinity, you could hate it out. You could use artifact hate to bring it down. Gorilla Shaman, the old Mox Monkey, was like the popular way to do that. So you would, your opponents would have all their mirrored in lands, and then you would play Gorilla Shaman, and you just eat up their lands, and then they can't play anything. So it wasn't really a fun way, to hate out the opponent and just, get your win in. But there was kind of checks in place. Do you have your Affinity hate in your deck? If not, then Affinity can go wild. So that's why Affinity would show up sometimes and put up numbers, but a lot of times it wouldn't. So when you gave it that extra consistency and then added cards like Deadly Dispute, and eventually later on, more recently, cards like Blood Fountain and Wedding Invitation, which just provided all of this additional support to those decks, it became a lot more resilient. So then people were like, well, action needs to be taken about this. And so Sojourner's Companion was banned. But that card specifically, along with Expedition Map, by a lot of players were viewed as not really the right calls, which kind of led to the bans that happened last week, which was, ATOG went away. So.
Well, there you go. Hopefully the format is now in a healthier place, and it certainly sounds like with the team in place that, it will hopefully be paid a little better attention to than Wizards has been able to do so.
Correct. So far, we had 2 challenges over the weekend, 2 Pauper challenges on Magic Online, and so far it looks pretty diverse. In a weird twist of fate, Affinity actually took first place on Saturday, but there was only 3 lists that are I think there was 6 lists in the whole tournament, and 2 of them made top 8. But people are trying different brews. They're playing. Stop me if you've heard this card before. Krark Clan Grunt in place of a Tog. It is. Oh my god, I can't even remember it off the top of my head. It's
Krark Clan whom?
Grunt.
Okay.
It's it's 2 in a red, and it's I think it's a 2/2. And you can sacrifice an artifact.
Oh, we're professionals. I pulled it up. It's a gray ogre that has the ability sack an artifact. Krark Clan Grunt gets 1/0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Not quite ATOG.
Right. So, but people were using it as a mini ATOG, and then you can still use Disciple
Wedding
of the Vault.
Invitation? Oh.
And then you you can use use it as the free sack outlet to sacrifice things to Disciple of the Vault. So,
He hasn't Disciple the Vault legal in Pauper?
It is.
And ATOG was the problem?
Yep. So Disciple really wasn't seeing a whole ton of play for a while, actually. The problem with ATOG was that you could just get it into lethal damage. And if your opponent's tapped out, then you just sacrifice all your artifacts to it and fling it at your opponent's face.
Nice.
Or you Temur Battle Rage and go over whatever blockers they have. So it was kind of a little Death Shadowy, different, but it kind of had that same kind of thing. And for a while, it was borderline a problem, but wasn't really a problem. It had its checks and everything. Again, Affinity, you could hate out Affinity. The problem was here, though. You'd have to ban a full cycle of these new artifact duels, and there was a couple of issues with that. First off, you can't really surgically remove a couple of the ones it was Rakdos and Grixis Affinity mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you took those lands, well, a lot of the deck is still colorless, so it just probably runs some other ones, right?
Right.
The deck started actually only running a few of them, especially as they went into the Rakdos build, because they only ran the Rakdos.
This is
lands.
what you're telling me. Affinity lands might all need to be banned. Where have we seen this before?
I know, right? And the other problem was there were other decks, non-affinity decks, that had started to use these cards in some really interesting manners. So I don't know how much you actually may have paid attention to Pauper, but there was this neat little interaction that people discovered between the indestructible artifact duels and a lovely little card called Cleansing Wildfire.
Hell yeah. Love that one.
So they target their own lands, but because they're indestructible, they actually use it as a rampant growth themselves, and they draw a card from it. So it's actually spawned new builds and new decks that are actually being played. So it was like, the decks aren't really running as many copies of these as they were at first. And you're also seeing, other decks come from these, like these, and if you ban just a couple, well, then they'd probably just play off-color ones. There wasn't really a clean solution there. And ATOG really ended up just kind of being the one that just seemed the most, like the cleanest, most efficient way to kind of bring the deck down to, a more acceptable power level, basically. And then with, Tron, there was obviously the mana rocks. And that one, as Gavin writes out in the article, we went back and forth with Tron for days because we couldn't settle on what to hit. Because don't really want to hit Tron completely. There's
Cleansing Wildfire being a card you mentioned is a card that can be played against Tron.
Exactly.
So there's some interesting, play there.
Correct.
Whether or not they'd want to, yeah.
Right. There was some hit and miss factors to that. Tron decks play a lot of Pulse Marasa to kind of get those lands back, so that way they kind of ensure that they keep playing. And then there was like, well, if you ban the Tron lands, you stop all versions of Tron, you hard kill the deck, and you have a lot of players who are out of the deck. Yeah. And again, there was a lot of different versions of Tron that have existed. People are currently more familiar with the more recent Flicker Tron versions, which was, kind of the reason bans had to be made, was that the deck had been continuously powerful, continually putting up numbers, and had one of the highest win rates in the format. And it would do things like create these flicker loops, and you would use like Ghostly Flicker or Ephemerate to on a mnemonic wall or Archaeomancer or some similar card effect, which would get the flicker back the mnemonic wall and would bring the Ghostly Flicker or Ephemerate back to your hand, but you would also get an additional flicker, so you'd flicker like Stonehorn Dignitary and
the attacks.
And stop all attacks. Or you would flicker Muldrifter, right? And you just get infinite card draws. People used to have sometimes used Din Rovahor, which just continually
I like that. There you go. Yeah.
Continually recoils.
Really
all
upset
of their
about
stuff.
that one in particular.
Yeah,
I feel like out of all the ones people complained about, Din Rovahor felt the worst to people.
It probably felt quite bad. Yeah,
it's definitely rough. I've beaten Din Rovahor locks before with elves, and that's always really fun. If you turns out if you gain like 600 life with Well-Wisher before they Din Rovahor you, they just can't.
It's a lot of
kill
attacks
you.
needed from a Din Rovahor. Yeah,
they can't kill you with if they put every creature in their deck onto the battlefield and just swung for the rest of the game, they can't kill you, so they'll mill out before you. But it was just miserable to play against. But the problem is with Flicker, you've got Ghostly Flicker, Ephemerate, and Displace, which all kind of do the same thing. So you'd have to like hit like numerous cards all at once. And there's other decks that rely on those that aren't Tron that do different things.
Right.
So, you don't want to really hurt those decks if you can help it. And then there's the fog effects, which were kind of miserable. But the problem is there's a whole bunch of redundant fog effects.
Yeah.
Moment's Peace is annoying and Stonehorn Dignitary is a problem, sure, but then you get like Tangle and Respite and all these other effects, and it's just the same thing all over again, just without like the flashback or whatever. And then you try to do Mystical Teachings, because Mystical Teachings what lets them all have like one or two of spells. And it's like, well, there's other decks that play Mystical Teachings, including a control deck that's called Teachings, and you don't really want to hurt that so much, and then what are you gonna do? You're gonna hit the 1 and 2 of effects Like,
I mean, like the good thing about Pauper is that like when you ban people's cards, they're not really out much other than like an emotional experience. They're really
Right.
not out financially. Like if people get hit by if we're living in the past here, but like if Ragavan did get hit, then people are out $300+.
right.
If
Like,
if
the
if
biggest
Tron gets hit,
comparison-
people are out $10. If that.
Right. And the other thing too is, you know, the expectation is that there's going to be other decks that kind of, or other versions of Tron that kind of come out from that, right? We used to have the old Timbertron list, which did run Prophetic Prism, but it also ran like Prismatic Lens and Chromatic Star, and then you would also, you know,
Tron
probably run
always
similar
picks up
effects.
like in my experience, Tron always picks up the pieces and is gross again a year later in every format. So they'll be fine.
And we think that Tron's going to come back. We actually didn't see like any Tron this weekend at all in the challenges or anything, but it's probably only a matter of time until people start really figuring out the deck and giving it new life. But it won't be as like busted and consistent as before, but it'll be like a new kind of Tron, which is kind of the goal. You're not trying to kill the deck outright, but you're trying to power it down a bit.
Yeah, it should be fun to see. Well, there you go, everybody. That is a deep dive on Pauper. You may not have expected that from Brainstorm Brewery, but we widen our
We've done it
interests
before.
here.
We've
and
definitely
here we
done it
go.
before, so they
It's
should have
a,
expected it.
We've never
pro-
credibly done it before, though. We were just
Exactly.
talking out of.
Yeah, this was a proper
Corbin, I don't want people to have
Announcement.
expectations when they listen to this podcast.
This was a proper pronouncement of the predicament Pauper
Oh my god.
is predicated in.
You've murdered 2 jokes tonight. Just straight up assassinated them. It feels bad, man. It feels bad watching comedy get misused on this podcast.
I'm a professional.
You're a professional. Get us to the next segment. So why don't you get us to the next segment?
And the next segment is Pick of the Week. Welcome
Get us
in, everybody.
to the next segment without using the word segment.
The next part of the podcast is Pick of the
Right?
Week.
Come on.
All right.
This is your chance to show off. Didn't you take broadcast journalism classes? Let's hear it, man.
Okay.
Harness some professionalism. Really get us to that next segment.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, let's do this.
And now, everybody, it is time for us to move on to everybody's favorite piece of the week. It is time for the Pick of the Week.
Pick of the week, pick of the week, pick of the week. Time for the pick of the week.
Everybody's favorite
We-
set piece.
We heard that. I'm gonna give Corbin a chance to replicate that segue by picking Right of Replication. See, Corbin, that's how you do it.
That's how you
Right,
do
of
it, huh?
Right of Replication got
I thought you were trying to
reprinted-
say that's how it feels.
got
Okay.
reprinted for the first time in roughly 6 or 7 years.
It was
in Commander
replicated,
2020.
you mean?
It was in Commander 2021. Before that, it was in C14 and C15. Before that, it was in Zendikar. It is a definitely like an original all-star of like real
Yeah,
OGs
OG
remember
Commander.
Right of Replication being what you did in EDH back in the day. Like that, this was
Yeah.
like this is a format where Avenger of Zendikar and Right of Replication are good. And it's always just been, it's held a soft spot in many a player's heart. It's the original like 9 mana do big thing.
love that
And it
card.
crested above $10 before this most recent reprint. It is down to $2. This is the
It's
bottom
pretty
of the
cheap.
barrel where you will be able to buy your replications, assuming it continues to dodge reprints. I don't expect it to go another 6-year drought, but $2 is where you pick up your 5 or 6 copies that you use amongst your decks, and then you check back 2 years later and you're like, oh, this dodged reprints. DJ was right. Or you notice that it went down to $1 and you're happy because you got to play them for that amount of time for that cheaply.
All right. I'll jump.
Everything sounds so romantic when it's just, we're just doing end stage capitalism
Well,
on a podcast. Like,
I do it because I like the puzzle and I like to read the graphs, and all of the graphs come courtesy of mtgstocks.com, the generous sponsor of this podcast and the place where I go to check out all the latest interests. And that's where I found this card, a card that is the extended art version of this, is at an all-time high. But it's been pretty flat for the past 6 months or so. Both versions of this card, but it looks like it's picking up. Court of Grace from Commander Legends. This is part of the cycle. It's the best
What
one,
color
I think.
cord is it? The white
This is
one?
the white one.
It's the white one.
The
the
white
good
one
one.
is perhaps the best, yeah.
Yeah, it's $3. When it's battlefield, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a spirit. If you're the monarch, create a 4/4 angel instead. Yeah, this card's just very good. And look, if there's one thing we know, it's that these type of pillow 40 commander cards to give your spirit of safety type decks tend to remain popular for a long time. This card is, like I said, it's right around the top of where it's been at, and it's just not going to go any lower, I think, from this point. So $3 Court of Grace, I'm in. This is the best of the cycle.
Yeah, I got a same set. No one's talking about how Kamigawa is basically confirmed an enchantment set. Like, I don't see anybody talking about that, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like
It's
they've got
augments, which is
augments,
equipments
yeah.
and/or counters and/or auras,
enchantments. Yeah,
Sure,
Well,
but there's
We had Mark Rosewater's teaser today. It showed off or mentioned specifically enchantment creatures.
enchantment creatures. There's a ton of stuff from Modern Horizons 2. Not the least of which is a sub $2 Sterling Grove, which can search for those enchantment creatures. But I actually have my eye on a card with fewer printings than Sterling Grove, which means fewer copies, but it costs less. Now I realize that Sterling Grove's price currently is predicated on the fact that someone paid $25 for a Sterling Grove a couple of years ago, and they're not about to sell them for less than $2. I get it. I still think sub $1.50 Sanctum Weaver is just bonkers. You can get Sanctum Weaver for $1.50 on TCG Player. That's nuts. This is a $5 card, and when it happens, everyone's going to be surprised about it. Not that there aren't a ton of good things to be looking at right now. Enchantress's presence is sub $1 because of Modern Horizons 2. I like Sterling Grove. I kind of like Mirror Maid from Eldraine.
This is a card that has
nutty.
decent volume. Whatever the green-white legend is.
Yeah, I was about to say Sith. That seemed a pretty good one too.
yeah.
Sithis is just another Enchantress, but it's sub $2. Sithis is too cheap also.
And it's
So-
basically the Enchantress legend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I would never build a deck around it because, like, just having green and white, you lack a win condition that isn't Helix Pinnacle or, the one that
Sigil the Empty Throne.
the one that turns all your enchantments into creatures.
Starfield of Nyx.
Starfield.
Starfield.
Like Idyllic Tutor is still under $5. Like, there's some pretty nutty cards out there. So, like, let's pay attention when they tell us that, like, a pretty significant portion of the stuff in the set, and probably at least one legendary creature is going to give us an Enchantress deck because you've got all kind of stuff. I like Mirror Maid because it costs a third as much as Estrid's Invocation, despite being basically the same card that also hits artifacts. Because I don't know if you know this, but no one's ever switched Estrid's Invocation. They always just play it as a copy enchantment. I don't think people even knew you could switch it.
It does
And
technically do that.
That's why. Oh, Mirror Maid is in as many decks as Estrid's Invocation and costs a third as much. So that's not my
Mirror
pick of the
Maid's
week.
so
It's
good.
just a thing that you would know if you spend as much time on EDH Rec as I do. So, Sanctum Weaver, final answer.
Well, Paige, we want to thank you again for all the insight into Pauper. This was, look, it's a format I kind of like DJ. I've sort of followed and have some prior experience with, but, certainly don't follow super close. So this was a very interesting conversation, catch up on what's been going on with the format. And, I had some strong things to say about it last week. And I think I probably still stand by a lot of those in terms of what I think it means on the part of Wizards. But I am very happy that at the very least, the format is going to be better for the players playing it right now. So thank you again for coming on. Remind people, where can they find you across the internet if they want to give you some constructive and positive feedback?
Absolutely.
Don't dox somebody that just got added to an advisory group. If you've seen Shivam Bot's Twitter feed, you give us a fake Twitter handle for sure.
100%. I definitely know that there's already been some flack going around. So yeah. You can find me on Twitter at the Maverick Gal. The Maverick Girl was taken by some random no name, so I had to kind of compromise there.
Oh, you could have just browbeat that person like Corbin did to get the Hail Sea Hostler.
See, I tried that, and like the fact that Twitter is trying to be like, what about super followers? I'm like, can you just let me buy someone's handle if they haven't been active in X amount of time?
I know, right?
Like,
only if you have a hexagon.
8 years, let me have Rose of Thorns.
Only if you have a hexagon.
You can also find I write on coolstuffinc.com. You will find a lot less Pauper content on there. Unfortunately, Pauper becomes a difficult format to write about after a while. It turns out when the meta game is roughly stale and you're seeing the same decks over and over again, which isn't always a bad thing. I mean, that it's an eternal format that kind of happens, but what it means is it makes it harder for you to write about. I primarily have been writing a lot more like commander content recently, casual kind of stuff. I did some stuff with Advanced Jumpstart recently, talking about like making custom Jumpstart lists, but doing it a little more tightly constructed rather than like the more beginner friendly Jumpstart packages that like Wizards puts together. Nothing wrong with that, but I think if you're making like something kind of like a Jumpstart cube, you might want to do something that's a little more, has a little more depth to it, a little more, stronger cards, a little better consistency, better mana base, things like that. Things that'll let
like
you
artifact
play.
Pauper lands.
Right, exactly. Or, mana rocks or whatever, dual lands, just whatever. And, so I write about a lot of different things. It's not just Pauper. I will obviously, probably within the next week or so, when Kamigawa finally is fully previewed, I will end up writing Pauper set reviews. Check that out. I this past Friday actually put out a article on Goblins combo, which is a really fun deck. If you want to check that out, it's another one of those first day of class combo decks using Putrid Goblin and Skirk Prospector to generate infinite mana, infinite death triggers, all of that stuff. So that's a really cool deck if you want to check that out. You can also find me sometimes on Twitch at twitch.tv/themaverickgirl. I have not streamed in quite a while. I've had a lot going on in my life, but I do really like to stream, and I really want to get back to that pretty soon. So if you want to give me a follow there, I will probably be doing less Magic, more retro game stuff, as I was talking about earlier. But whatever I do, I'm going to be having a good time with it.
All right. Well, there you go. We appreciate it. We appreciate you sharing all of the insights with us. Thank you again for coming on. Thank you, everybody at home, for listening. We'll see you next week.